Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is WeatherBrains episode number 720 for the 4th of November, 2019. This is James. This is the pre-show, the magical time of the program, where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we occasionally say very outrageous things. And if you are new to this, just slide the little bar over about 10 minutes. We'll start in 10 minutes or so. But I've got to do a couple of things here real quick. Like, get the right embed code up and get the right guests on the show and our regulars. So let's invite everybody in. I think most people might be here tonight. We've had a lot of outages of late. Kim might be out. She might have to work tonight, but other than that, I think most people are in. So let's just keep adding our regulars here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's it. So now they have been invited. And got the notification we're live, so we are cooking with gas. Got fairly quiet weather pattern this week. I guess the big story is the progressive nature of these cold fronts, these cold shots coming into the eastern half of the country. It's going to be cold. We'll talk about that once we get rolling here. What's happening here? Been pretty busy of late. I've been doing these book signings on Saturdays, and we have just seen so many wonderful people. But thanks to everybody that picked up a copy of the book. The book is called Weathering Life, and it is on online at spanbook.com if you'd like to read more about weather history and my life and times, and just felt like it needed to chronicle the journey. We did a show on the book, I guess, about 2 or 3 months ago. It was released back in the summer. But anyway, I've learned a lot about the book publishing business. The publisher makes you work hard. Bill Murray is back in the saddle again.
Why have I no sound? Interesting.
I'm talking, I think I'm talking online because I was hearing myself talk back. Let's move this over a little bit here. Yeah, I think my sound is okay. Bill, can you not hear me? Somebody's got a dog. Some dog is going nuts here.
Hey, but I can't figure out how to hear you on my headphones. Hang on, James.
Whose dog is that?
It's mine.
Is that your dog? Oh, well, then you can hear us.
I can hear you, but you can't. I mean, I can't hear you through my headphones, though. That's really strange. Lord, I gotta get my wife to shut up the dog.
That's what a 12 gauge is for, you know.
I can't believe you said that.
That's a show title.
Yeah, now that's a little on the edge right there. So, Dr. Scala.
No, I'm sorry, Bill.
Where are my settings?
And let's see.
I may have to go
here.
out and come back in.
Hi, this is Leo Laporte from This Week in Tech. You're listening to WeatherBrains.
Wow.
I haven't listened to him in 2 years or more.
I'll occasionally listen to Mac Break Weekly.
Yeah, that was a good show.
Hey, I want to give some kudos to a fellow podcaster, a friend, a meteorologist named James Spann.
When was that?
I've got this new soundboard program, and all these elements just kind of got slotted in there, and I'm seeing some things I've not seen in a while.
But
It's
when did he
messing
say
up my-
that to
messing
you?
up my audio, James.
What is that from?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That was all there
Bill,
was?
can you hear us?
I can hear you fine, but you're coming through my computer speakers, not my headphones.
National temperature extremes on this Monday varied from 30 early in the day at Jackson, Wyoming, to 110 this afternoon at Gila Bend, Arizona.
Wow.
Why-
I think
why
it
was-
blows every time I write an Alabama weather update on the blog.
Why was he giving
let me-
you kudos?
Let me run this thing again here.
Hey, I want to give some kudos to a fellow podcaster, a friend, a meteorologist named James Spann, who works in Alabama on television. He's a TV weatherman. And of course, you remember we had terrible tornadoes just ripping through Alabama last week. Pretty amazing. He's it's ABC 3340.
I guess it was after this super outbreak in 2011.
Yeah, that's the radio show, not the podcast.
Yeah, that was his nationally syndicated.
Yeah, you can tell because he takes these long pauses
Yeah.
on the radio show. You know what happened to that show? And I see this happen to a lot of people. This happened to, I mean, people who get big, like Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly, Kara Swisher's happening to Kara Swisher right now. They get bigger and bigger, and most shows that are good, not including this one, are 30% fooling around and 70% information. And then they switch over a period of time. The hosts get too big and their egos get too big, and it gets to 70% of them and 70% fooling around and 30% information. And that's where they lose me.
So what percentage are we on this show, Kevin? What do you think?
95%.
This is 95% fooling around and
Yeah, exactly.
0.3% information.
That's why we have 5 listeners.
Aubrey helped bail us out.
Hi,
Well-
guys.
There's the classy part of the show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm watching? Dancing with the Stars here.
Are you on that?
One night Aubrey's going to be on my little TV.
That's right. When does that happen?
2 weeks, November 17th. And
2
I am
weeks.
so sore.
Oh, man.
I almost
That's a rough
cannot
gig.
move. So we did a 2.5 hour dance practice today. I've got practice every day for the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
So
Let's check with Craig here real quick. Craig, can you hear us?
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, look great, sound great. Good deal. Thanks
Nice,
for joining
nice
us.
audio, Craig. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I've got the uplighting on. I might be blind in a half hour, but I want to look good at least for the start.
Yeah. So, Craig, we have to wait until 30 after the hour. So in about 90 seconds, we'll start here. I think Kim Kloko is out. She's working tonight.
Troy's here.
Where's Nate? Has just been a no-show. Nate has just totally
he's
turned his
flying
back
all
on us.
over the country. He's
He's all famous.
Mr. NBC.
See, now Craig reminds me of a good story. He said uplight, and I remember this story. This was actually, you know what this was? This was the day I met my wife many, many years ago. And I met her on a live shot. She was working for the other station, and we met on a live shot at the Science Museum of Virginia. And I had to rush back to the TV station after doing the noon show to do an interview segment with Marie Osmond, of all people.
Really?
What?
Yes, Marie Osmond. And there was an interview set, and I was going to do it, and there was a couple of things we were going to do. But I rushed back, and we ended up waiting around because she wanted uplighting. She needed lighting down, at the stage level or the riser or toward her feet. And the reason was she told her that was one of the things that Lucille Ball had taught her.
Wow.
Is that you always get uplighting to, deal with the wrinkles or whatever it was that they were dealing with. So There's my boring personal story from the.
I am emailing our engineer right now to demand some uplighting. Let me just say.
See, now I should have told that on the show, and that could have been the show title.
Exactly. So welcome to our television audience. It is 30 minutes after the hour. We've learned about uplighting. Kevin, do you have any uplighting on you tonight?
He's got downlighting.
No.
I'm about to say, you're downlighting, man. You got nothing. I mean,
there's no amount of uplighting.
How's
No
this for
amount
uplighting?
There we go, John.
Oh,
Dr.
there you
John's
go.
got it.
Oh, that's some
Yeah.
uplighting.
No amount of uplighting will help this face
I
here.
got some uplighting too.
all right, let's get this sucker started here because we are now on the television and we can get going. And here we go in. Let me get the right, goodness, I was about to, my open tab is college fight songs. I have a new soundboard program, so everything's different here. We're not going to play that. We're going to go to, WeatherBrains Maine. Yeah.
Gee whiz.
WeatherBrains Maine. That's it. Here we go. In 5, 4. Well, hang on. Okay. Everything's different. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 720. This is for the 4th of November, 2019. Glad you're with us this week. Good to see many of our regulars here, including the lovely Aubrey Urbanowitz, our Dancing with the Stars star. So you're what, two weeks away?
2 weeks away.
So
And
you
Now,
wanna
I
how
give
can
the
long?
pre-
feel
How
it.
long has this been going on? Your rehearsal?
Since I had my first practice the very last week of July.
Oh wow! So everybody that does this reports that I mean, it's grueling, but you get in
Yes.
great shape and lose weight. Is this what you're finding?
No.
Not that you needed to. I'm just saying that's what everybody says.
I mean, maybe when they're practicing 8 hours a day, but it just, and I've kept my normal workout routine and I've been running and all this stuff, and it's not falling off as easy. I think one girl in our program, I think she's lost like 15 pounds, and I'm like, oh, how?
Wow.
How is this
Wow.
possible? So,
What about you, James? You did it some years ago.
Well, I lost 27 pounds. No, I didn't lose any weight. No.
You were on the
Yeah,
senior version of it, though, weren't you? Like the grandmas and grandpas or something like that you were dancing?
Yeah, I forget what this thing was. We had to go practice every week on Friday nights between the newscasts down here with this guy that was on Dancing with the Stars. His name was Fabian Sanchez. I think that was his name. And it was hard work, Aubrey. I mean,
I've
this was
heard.
hard because I don't do this kind of thing. But it was like you. We started in summer, and it was something that happened in November. So
I have
changed.
to take Dramamine before I go in because we're
Wow.
practicing turns, and you can only do it so many times. So
Wow.
you have to
James-
center.
James-
Concussion protocol.
James lost 27 pounds of hair.
Exactly. So,
I'll try to
Troy, is
step
that
it
your
up
real?
in the next
Troy,
2
is that
weeks.
Troy Kimmel? Is that your real hair?
Yes, it is.
I don't believe it.
Painted
I mean-
like the back deck, but it is my own hair.
Show
That's a
title.
show title. Show title right there.
Okay.
Wow. So most people that have been doing it for as long as we have, Troy, they tend to yank it out with time. So
I know.
congratulations.
It's true. You're right.
And of course, speaking of hair, Dr. John, no human should have hair like an angel like that. John,
No,
you
that's
set the
amazing.
standard.
Thank you very
I mean,
much.
What's the secret, man?
Well, it's too bad there's nothing between the hair, but well, I've told you this many times. It's chocolate milk, it's water, and it's beer.
In that order, right?
In
Don't
that
do it
order.
to
And
me.
you don't
You-
drink it, you just put
I was
it.
going to say, yeah, you put it on your head. No,
Yeah, awesome. All right, Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest here. We've got an important guest we got to get to.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back after JV football season is over because all those games happen to fall on these nights. And so thanks everyone for letting me have a little time away. But I'm really excited to be back tonight because Craig Setzer, the chief meteorologist, CBS 4 in Miami, is joining us. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Craig, are you related to Brian Setzer or the Stray Cats?
I am unfortunately not close enough to get free tickets to a concert. So
no way.
Oh,
He's
really?
fantastic.
Wow.
How are you related to him?
He's a cousin's uncle's nephew's distant college roommate, and that's about as close.
That's awesome. Everybody go get his Christmas album. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just expect you to do the Stray Cat strut in a little bit.
Okay.
We'll be fine.
Maybe Aubrey can do that.
Yeah, she should be able to now. I thought when James said that, the guy that was going to join his group was from the Dancing with the Stars show. I thought it was Sean Spicer, the old White House press secretary. I bet they ran him through the mill on that thing. But those guys are kind of like just figureheads, aren't they? They don't really dance, do they, Aubrey?
I don't know. I don't watch the actual version.
Watch the real one.
But they have to. I mean, to learn a whole. Okay, so I've spent 3 months learning this dance, and they do it in a week.
Wow.
There you go. So, are you going to perform it on the show sometime, Aubrey?
I can send in some video.
There you go.
Will that work?
Well, good. Craig, take us through your meteorological career. How you got where you are today.
So I, like most of us here, got started by being really into weather before I was, even in high school. I mean, junior high, I knew I was going to be a meteorologist. My family moved from Connecticut to St. Louis, Missouri, and severe thunderstorm. And I thought, I'm hooked. Here's something that affects everybody. And sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. I thought it's the ultimate challenge. So like many who followed this path, I got an internship at a TV station in St. Louis. I worked for Dave Murray, if the name's familiar. And then I went to the University of Oklahoma because I thought severe weather was the thing. And here I am in Florida doing hurricanes. And I've been here now for 23 years. I was in Tampa for 3 years in the late 90s. And now I've been here for 20 years. And I think I've grown roots here and I can't leave now. You know how it is.
Well, I bet they wouldn't let you if you tried. So Kevin, did you wear your OU jacket tonight in honor of Craig?
Oh, is that where you went?
Yeah. Boomer Sooner.
Fantastic. Yes, I did.
so OU's chances to get in the college football playoff, where you put them, Craig?
Well, deterministic or probabilistic?
Yeah.
Show title.
and are they different? That would be the interesting question. So it's been a busy several years for you, hurricanes, obviously, but the reason we met is because you wrote the show and asked the question, what's it like, talk about what it's like when your home is being threatened by a storm. And that question intrigued me. And I thought, well, I'm not only going to pass this on as an email, I'm going to get you on as a guest. So talk about that for you in Florida. You've been through several hurricanes, I would imagine.
Yeah, I've been here since 2000 in South Florida. A while ago, I was probably back in the Moore, Oklahoma tornado. I thought, what do the people at SPC go through when they're in a high risk day and they're, they're thinking, am I going to be able to come home to the same home that I left because of that threat? And then I thought, oh my gosh, here I am kind of living the same thing. Of course, it's a longer duration thing. But in 2017, when I left my house after I had shuttered up and everything for Irma, I left on a Friday evening, and you literally look at everything and think, after you've taken pictures, of course, is it going to look like this when I come back? Now, most likely it will. You may lose some trees. That's the greater likelihood, but there's always that chance you may come back to devastation. And so it's kind of stressful. And in 2017, even more so. It's funny because my mother, who passed away just a year ago, but in 2017 was in the Tampa area, and she was in an assisted care facility and had gone home before Irma to Northern Kentucky, where she was from, to visit her sister. And then on that Thursday, because Irma hit that Sunday night in Tampa, on that Thursday said, I'm on the plane, I'm at the airport, I'm on the plane, I'm coming back. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're fine, you're great where you are. And she said, well, I've checked the models and I think it's going to miss. And, every meteorologist has that where their parents say to them, well, I've looked at things and I think I know better than you. So as I was talking about South Florida being prepared, I was also worried about my family being prepared. And then, and I'm sure many of you, James, I know you've gone through it. When you're in a big, big situation, you really have to suck your emotions in and just think about the job that you're doing, and because it can get away from you if you start thinking about your loved ones and your friends and your family and things like that. So that was kind of why I wrote the email to you guys.
Yeah, Span, has that ever happened to you? Has one been targeting your house while you were on the air?
Oh man.
You know, not within a few blocks, but very close. And, you know, that's one of the things that you have to learn when you're on the air in a situation like that, is to somehow fight off that temptation to just stop, walk off the wall, make a phone call, find out if everybody's okay, and just keep on doing what you're supposed to do. I think Jason Simpson had a harder time back on April 27, 2011. He had multiple family members within a direct path, and I've not had that. But he was just a champion. He kept his composure, he kept his cool, and performed like a champ. And it's hard. Let me tell you what, it is hard.
I know on April 27th, my son was a student at the University of Alabama. And I had alerted him, you know, several hours before, you know, because James, as you remember, we had tornadoes that Friday, the 13th or whatever day that was. And, you know, he wasn't anywhere where he should be. I think he was in a Target store when that tornado came up Skyland. And so, you know, I was determined he was going to be in the right place that day. So I let him know early, you know, that was going on. But when that tornado appeared on the sky cam, and you just knew that it was going to come right through Tuscaloosa, and it came within, you know, 3 blocks of his house. And, you know, I looked at, you know, I'd kept the phone line open because I really just couldn't handle not knowing. And, you know, through that whole process, I looked at my associate while we were working, and I'm like, I'm going to be going and getting a body bag tonight.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, I mean, I literally was up on the table in the weather office, you know, watching the monitor like, oh my God, this thing is going to come right down, you know, 15th Street and get his house. And, you know, fortunately he was okay, but it was really important to me to know that, you know, he was okay, so I could, you know, keep going, because it really is, it's a, you know, you get torn. And that was the closest I ever came to, although the tornado actually came to us, and I realized that we did not have a tornado plan in our office, of all places. And it was like, you know, okay, improvise a tornado plan, because that circulation was near the airport. And, you know, we were only 3 or 4 miles away from it. And it was, you know, that's a sobering situation. I began to realize I'd put, you know, our team in danger by not being ready for it. So anybody else got a story?
Yeah, Bill, I do. I had one of those unique circumstances as well. I was working my early shift at the Weather Channel, and we had an unusual tornado warning at about 7 in the morning while I was working that shift. And I remember being on the air and talking directly to my wife and saying, yeah, now is the time to get to the basement, take the kids to the basement, take this seriously. It was one of those odd circumstances. Unfortunately, it lifted and missed us, but there I was on national television telling my wife to go for safety.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question though to me, because I have similar. There have been other times with my family, but just recently, you know, Matthew is at UT Dallas, which is in Richardson, so he was just north of that most recent event that went through Dallas. But we were watching. I was watching from home, and Tracy's actually in Virginia right now, so we had radar scope, and he knows how to use it, and he's looking, you know, at things as well. But it makes me think. These are people that are our families and that we have coached, and they're supposed to know things. But then for me anyway, I start to realize, and Kim's talked about this too, because they've been threatened at her house. Not threatened, but, you know, looking carefully at the situation. And you think, okay, these are people in my direct orbit, and you're still kind of coaching them through. And then so you say, well, does everybody else know the things that these people know? And in many cases, I think the answer is no, which is kind of sobering if anybody wants to respond.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Kevin. You know, you sometimes you just fear for what, you know, the average person thinks. If our families know what they know,
yes,
and get as much information as we give them.
And actually, a better example was, it must have been this spring. Somebody at the base, we have Shepherd Air Force Base here, and somebody at the base pulled the trigger on the sirens at the base, and you can hear them on the base and you can hear them around, but various things went off, and I was on people's apps and things like that. But I was a couple days later, I was in getting my hair cut, and there are mostly women in there, and every woman that was in there knew of the tornado warning or knew of the sirens, and every single person in there did something different because in that moment, they didn't know what to do. And this is increasingly interesting to me from a habits standpoint. It's like, well, you hear these things, but you really don't need this information, hopefully more than once or maybe twice a year, if that, for an individual. And so it's not like you're embedded in it like we are. And so then Kim and I have started to talk about this too. And I think it'll be some of the coming societal impact research information that it really is key to present some of this safety information during, not just it's here and it's going there, but what do you do? Because they're not embedded in this like we are, and they need to know in that moment, or maybe ideally 10 or 15 minutes ahead of time. Okay, here's the thing. I know we've told you this, go to the basement or inside room 1,000 times, but now that you need it, here's what it is, which I think is also fascinating.
So James, I guess you find yourself in that situation when you're on the wall frequently, repeating the same information, but you do a really good job of throwing that in there, those constant reminders of what to do. Do you have to consciously tell yourself, or is it just sort of automatic?
You do, because it's easy to think, well, everybody knows what to do. I need to focus on the location of the storm and where it's going and who's in the polygon, who's not. But we have to be cognizant of the fact there are some people that honestly don't know what to do. And maybe they've lived here for 10 years, or maybe they just moved here from California and they are absolutely baffled. So we have to be somewhat repetitive. And, it makes people mad. They say, you're saying the same thing over and over, and you get the hate mail and stuff. But again, all that stuff, you just have to do the right thing. But people like him and the social scientists, the ones that really need to lead us on that issue, because
so
some of it depends on how often we've had severe weather. If we go like a year without anything, you need to really hit it. But if we just had one a week ago and a week before that, maybe not as much.
Well, what I tried to do with our Halloween storms that we just had a few days ago, I kind of that night before, I'm trying to, you're trying to process everything and kind of trying to make a mental picture of how the day could go and what you'll need to do. And I'm running these severe events solo. So sometimes you have help, sometimes you don't. And I think I kind of just put a message out on Facebook and just kind of put my thoughts out there. Hey, this is what I do before a severe weather event. One, I've got my plan in place. We all, my house knows what to do, but mentally, this is how I prepare. So how do you prepare? And I kind of went through the steps, in a non-severe weather market. We do go through this each year, but maybe not quite as often and maybe not quite as extreme. So I kind of put the steps out there. And I feel like for me, that helped me actually calm down a little bit. And the response I got was very good, for people to say, hey, she's taking the time to say, you guys need to be prepared for tomorrow. And this is what you need to do if you haven't really thought about it. And I thought the response was actually pretty well taken.
So we're all talking tornadoes, but Craig, a hurricane's a big, slow, lumbering minimum of a day and a half thing. And so you're grinding the same stuff over and over again, or are you?
Well, it's interesting. It's so interesting listening to you guys talk about it, because it's making me realize how different it really is. Because like, for example, Dorian, we have really 3 things that we go through when we have a near impact or a direct impact, especially like with an Irma situation, where there is this anticipation and there are these waves of societal response. And the first wave is usually the people who've been through it, who've been in the lines, and they're not going to do it again. So they go and they flush all the water out of the stores. They line up at the gas stations and they draw down all the gas stations. And all of a sudden, there's this anxiety that comes up because now you can't get what you think you need, even though the storm may be 5 to 7 days away. Then, so typically my messaging, and it becomes this thing where you're having to control the message, but also manage expectations, because you don't want to be too confident and you don't want to be too dismissive, and you want to say what you know without raising anxiety, but also giving people things to do. And so Irma hit on a Sunday. The weekend before was Labor Day. So that Friday, that's how far away it was. It was like 10 days away. I said, this is a good 3-day weekend. to check your shutters. We don't know if it's coming here, but it's out there. Check your shutters, check your supplies. We're not doing anything yet, but make sure if we have to do something, you're ready to go. Because by the time we say it's time to start preparing, if we have to say that, everybody else is going to be flooding to get their supplies and stuff too. So stay ahead of that societal curve. And that's days before the storm's even coming. Then that's kind of the anxiety phase where everybody wants to know, is it going to hit? Is it going to hit? Is it going to hit? And obviously we don't know. But we know that it takes so long to get prepared. By the time we know if it is going to hit, it's too late to really prepare much more because it's almost on top of us. And then there's the terrifying phase, which is the storm itself. And that usually I think is not as bad as if you get hit the recovery, because the recovery can sometimes last days, weeks, months, or in some cases, like in South Florida and Andrew in '92, it lasted years before they really got back up on their feet. And I think that'll be the case for the Bahamas, the Northwest Bahamas there, the Abacos and Grand Bahama. It'll probably be years. So my messaging, it's funny because it's much, much slower and very careful. We make sure that everybody is on the same page with the National Hurricane Center forecast, but everybody at the station's on the same page too. Nobody's saying anything that's different from our message, which updates with each 6-hour forecast cycle.
So is the anxiety phase, is there nothing that we can do about, number one, that getting longer, and some people going out and, as you say, emptying the shelves of water early? There's nothing we can do about that?
Well, they did a study after Irma because Irma was a south to north, so it basically was the peninsula, and they did a study to figure out how they could replenish the fuel supplies more quickly, and they determined because of the scale and the number of people that have come to Florida, they just can't do it. And so the big thing is with hurricanes, especially for South Florida, is because of our construction codes, don't leave unless you're in an evacuation area or you're in a mobile home. Basically, if your house is shuttered up, you wait it out so you don't have that gas issue. Then the other thing that people don't seem to remember is that the tap water is perfectly fine to drink. So we always try to encourage people, the bottled water you put in your freezer in case you lose power, and then you can use that, transfer that to the refrigerator side to keep your food cold. Fill up containers with the tap water. You don't have to go to the store and get bottled water, things like that. I think the anxiety phase will always be here because people get so rattled by a storm, and once the cone is over us and things like that, that they almost need something to do. And I think in a way that's almost a little bit of a release. I don't see everybody ever being totally prepared for something like that.
You said they did a study. Do you remember who they was?
Yeah, the Florida Department of Transportation.
Oh, okay.
They were doing exit times because there was this huge up the turnpike that goes up through Orlando from South Florida. Just huge lack of gasoline. People on the road for hours and hours and hours. And people were playing this game where they'd go to the West Coast and then the cone would shift and they'd try to come back to the East Coast. It was just a mess. So we always say, stay here unless you're in an evacuation zone, because of course it's flee the water, hide from the wind.
That's really interesting to me. How did you come to know of that? Did they send out press releases or did they call you? Because this transportation department thing, I'll say something more in a minute, but how did you learn about that?
So they did a post-storm thing at Florida International University here in South Florida, and they had the emergency manager of Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, the Keys. They had officials from the Department of Transportation and all that. They talked about the evacuation, how effective it was. In Irma, over 700,000 people evacuated zones that were near the coast, which is a huge number if you think about it. And most know that you don't have to go across the state. You don't have to get out of the state. You just have to get out of the evacuation zone. So this was kind of like I think it was about 6 months later, a lessons learned, what we learned, what we know we can't fix, what we know we can fix and make improvements.
And how did you learn about it? Did they call you up and say we did this? Or
I attended. Any of those things, these are things that when you're in a long duration event, you're always looking for knowledge that you can use to talk to people.
Right. Well, I'm fascinated by it too, because I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we're going to start this new Weather Insights thing with Kim, and it's sharing societal and behavioral impact research with broadcasters and eventually others. But some of the stuff she has me reading, it was just fascinating to me because you said Department of Transportation. And one of the things that I was learning about was, they're interested in, and the example was the Atlanta snowstorm that had the ice a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But how much they were interested in people's behaviors in that. And I thought, wow, the broadcasters need to know that stuff too. And because it's, it's points of information for us and it helps us understand how people are moving, but they're fascinated by it too. So thank you for that. That's really interesting.
Craig, I wanted to ask you about the demographics of your DMA. And in particular, what brings to mind is the landfall that Hurricane Charlie made in 2004. And one of the statistics that I recall was the average population, the age was 65 or something. So what about your population? Do you have a high percentage of those that have moved to Florida as senior citizens, have never experienced an evacuation?
So that's probably more true of the West Coast from Naples up through Sarasota and up to the Tampa Bay area. Down here, we tend to draw more from the I-95 corridor. So we have more New Yorkers, and no disrespect to New Yorkers, but they're like, oh, we went through Sandy, we'll be fine. And I'm like, no. This is going to be totally different than Sandy. So that's kind of the attitude. But I think, and I think this was mentioned, James said this about if there hasn't been severe weather in a year, you almost have to bring everybody back up, because Irma in a way was good for us because it reminded everybody what can happen and what you need to get. And I told everybody after Irma, what didn't work in your hurricane kit, write that down and keep that, because next time when hurricane season comes around, try to take care of that. So we have, after Irma, we kind of got refreshed a little bit, and we had a huge population increase between 2005 during Wilma and 2017 here. So we had a lot of people that didn't know what to do. And what we tell them is find somebody who's been through a hurricane, a real hurricane event, and ask them questions. That's your best source of information. Now, the Tampa Bay area, especially Pinellas County, that is a frightening scenario there. It lacks words to describe the potential of an elderly population, extremely vulnerable, and a catastrophic loss there.
And having not seen a major hurricane direct impact in a long time. So Craig, one of my friends, when I, in the hotel business, I asked for their hurricane plan about 30 years ago, had hotels on the Gulf Coast. And, when I read it, it was full of great information on what to do to prepare for the hurricane. And at the end, there was this line that said, have several clean pair of underwear. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So Harlan, why do you, is that because the hurricane may last a long time? He said, no, because you're going to mess up every pair of them. I bet Hurricane Dorian was like a 5 underwear pair of hurricanes as it was sitting right off the coast for you guys. Talk about the threat that presented and how nervous that had to make the meteorologists and the population and everybody in light of a beautiful forecast.
Yeah. Well, so Dorian was, I usually measure the hurricane anxiety by how much weight I lose before the hurricane arrives. And during Irma, I literally lost 9 pounds in 7 days because I was not only having to deal with the ramp up of our community in response, but I was dealing with my own preparation. And I was just so anxious because the analog for quite a while was the 1926 Great Miami Hurricane. And it was hard to fathom that there was a distinct possibility we could relive that. And if you look at the GDP adjusted loss, that's still the all-time, that's the benchmark of the worst or most catastrophic, damaging, costly hurricane on record. So that was in 2017. For Dorian, I lost 5 pounds, so it probably wasn't quite as high. But as we were living in some ways from model run to model run, there was originally the scenario where a faster moving, weaker storm may recurve a little bit and go across North Florida. And then there was it could be stronger and cross Central or South Florida. And then we introduced the third possibility, which would be, it would be extremely strong, come right next to us, and then begin its turn. And the turns in hurricane forecasting are always the real scary things because the models show the turns at different places, and you never know exactly, is that turn going to happen then? So when it finally did reach, it slowed down at the Abacos, and then stalled and drifted over Grand Bahama. We knew then that the uncertainty was decreasing. The uncertainty now was great for North Florida and for Georgia and South Carolina, but our uncertainty was decreasing. So when I started to say, we're going to be okay, everybody take a breath. You don't prep, no more preparations. We're just going to watch it now. People literally online were saying, how can you be so irresponsible? Exactly. How can you tell people not to be worried about this? And I was worried about it, but I knew at that point the core, which we're most concerned about, was not going to come right over us. So one guy said, I said, I don't expect you to trust me, but this is what I do. And I would never give a message like this if I didn't have confidence that this was going to be the outcome. And he said, well, I won't give you my house keys. I'm like, that's fair enough. You don't need to give me, you just trust me on the hurricane, not your house.
Did you have nightmares about a situation where it did come back to the west and impact the coast? That would just be unthinkable.
The feeling is with the Dorian situation to me was like a circular saw, and kind of like right next to your face, and you're just sitting there, and you're just staring at it, kind of like, oh,
exactly what it looked like.
Yeah,
Yikes.
and any movement towards you, you have to like rethink everything. Did I miss something? Do we need to? But it thankfully did as expected by the time it got close to us.
Did having Hurricane Floyd back 25 or 20 years ago, did that help because it had done a similar thing?
Well, we called that our third option, which was the gets close and then turns. We called that the Floyd factor. Maybe we'll have the Floyd factor here, which I said is going to be terrifying, but in the end, it will be better for us. Now, if you may not remember, but in '99, there were hurricane warnings from Miami-Dade County all the way up the Florida coast because the Hurricane Center skill wasn't as good back then, and it crossed Abaco and gradually went up off Daytona and skirted the coast, much like Dorian. In this case, we only had a tropical storm warning for Broward County, and a hurricane warning started farther to the north, and they were really, really precise, and I think they verified pretty well considering.
And think about how many evacuations were saved by that outstanding.
Yeah.
Just hundreds of thousands of people that didn't have to evacuate.
Yeah, and that's a friend of mine at the National Hurricane Center, Jamie Rome. That has been his one mission, is to make better storm surge evacuation, storm surge forecast, and not over evacuate, but make sure that people who need to do.
Yeah.
Now, Craig, after Dorian, graphically, are you using Sharpies more or less now?
Well, I am doing some different things now. I'm not necessarily using Sharpies. I've had a pet peeve with kind of the cone, because the cone was introduced around 2002, and originally there were the wind speed probabilities, and then they got from that the cone. And the cone, by definition, tracks where the center is expected to be, and then only 2/3 of the time based on the previous 5 years skill. But the cone doesn't show the extent of the storm, the
right.
wind field, the
That's
impacts
right.
and stuff like that. So I finally, after last year, said, well, it's actually after Irma, and I don't know if I can share my screen. If you don't mind, I'll put up the images. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Share
Brian Setzer videos, just 10 seconds of them, whatever you want to show.
Let's see if this will show. Okay. So can you see that there? That's Irma.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I looked at the Irma thing and I said, now here is the wind field there. That's the tropical storm force winds and that kind of that gold area, which we call storm size. And then you see the cone, which is really tiny when it comes out for the first 24, 48, 96, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 day time periods. And I thought this is so, in a way, deceptive, because people over here in Andros Island, or for a time even in South Florida when the storm got coast, we were out of the cone, but the storm extended so far beyond the cone that I felt like we've got to do a better way, something better. And so for years, the social scientists and the researchers in the community with the Hurricane Center have been trying to better explain the cone. And I finally just said, if we have to keep explaining the cone, maybe the problem is not our explaining, maybe it's the cone itself. So I kind of went to a different approach here and introduced it this year. And let me play this and you'll kind of see it here. So there's Dorian, and that's the the tropical storm force wind radii there. You can see it extending out just to the east of the coast. And then and we call it storm size. And so this is, and studies have shown that areas that experience tropical storm force winds, those people say, well, we had the storm. We felt the storm. We experienced the storm. And so what I did was then I took the wind radii and then kind of animated it out over time so that it shows the basic effect of the winds there. Now, the cone outline is in there. You can kind of see it there. That's where the cone is, which doesn't touch South Florida. But
I don't think we're getting your animation,
Yeah.
Craig. You may have
We
to
still got the old graphic.
Well,
Okay.
if you have a different thing, you can maybe refresh
me do
your
that.
video.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. How's that?
There you
Bingo.
go.
There you go.
Okay, let me back up. So there is the storm size for Dorian. Let me animate it out here. So the little outline there, and can you see my cursor, or is that not on there?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so that is the cone, cone right there. And the storm extends well beyond the cone in this short period. And then this is the threshold for the wind speed probabilities. And usually we use 33%, which is about, so it's 2/3 of the time these areas will see it. Unfortunately, because Dorian was so strong, the wind speed probability thing kind of blew up. So we had to trim it off so that it matched where the wind speeds would be. But basically this was to emphasize where the tropical storm force winds would extend out beyond the cone. Now, another one that we did, I did this for Lorenzo. Get Lorenzo up here. So, and I put on this one and make sure can you see Lorenzo there?
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet.
All right, let me make sure I can share it.
You get like extra points for using the screen.
Yeah.
There you go.
Bingo. We got it.
Okay, so there's Lorenzo. So that is the hurricane force winds in the red, and the yellow is the tropical storm force winds. And I used it because it was a good example of how far a big storm can have the wind field extending beyond the cone. So there's the cone through the first 2 days, and you can see if you're living on the, well, we're out of the cone, we're fine. You're not fine at all. And if the storm's lopsided at all too, you could be fine on one side of the cone and not so good on the other side of the cone. So in doing this, I'm always showing the cone because you can't just take the cone out of the picture. People will be like, well, where's the cone? Where's the cone? So I'm always showing the cone. I'm always showing the forecast icons. It's all based on the Hurricane Center. And these are the wind speed probabilities at a threshold from the National Hurricane Center too. So I'm not doing anything different that's not available from the Hurricane Center because I want to be consistent with their forecast. I'm just using the data in a different way to help convey a message here.
And so let me play devil's advocate. What do they say, or do viewers say, or other people say if you're showing something that's quote unquote different? Because again, devil's advocate, you're in some ways, are you going rogue and you're showing something you said that's different now, which we all love, obviously, but again, devil's advocate.
Right. So I started exploring this. They had a meeting at the University of Miami back in May, maybe it was April, and some of the folks from the National Hurricane Center were there. And I pitched this idea, and it got a lot of interest. And there were also people that were social scientists, researchers that were working on different color schemes, different wording, things like that, and to see the public impact. And I approached them and I said, do you mind if I give you what my scheme here and you try it too? And they said, absolutely. We're doing tests. We always like different approaches and stuff. And then I met with the National Hurricane Center folks in early August and discussed what I was doing with them. And at the time, I was just using their forecast for wind radii. And they said, well, have you tried this? And I thought, oh, you kind of just unknowingly put your blessing on what I'm doing, didn't you? So then I kind of introduced it a little bit and started showing it. And it got a lot of positive feedback from the community because this is one of these things, don't show it if you can't explain it. So every single time I would explain it. When you're in long form coverage, you of course have the opportunity because you're filling time now and you explain it. There was one other thing, unless you want to stick with this for just a little while longer.
We'll take whatever you got.
Yeah.
Okay, there was one other thing that I did because the one thing that I didn't like that we were seeing was, pull up here. I made a WeatherBrains folder just for you guys. So
I don't know that we've ever had a folder made on it.
He obviously, yeah, he thinks this show's bigger than it is, apparently.
So I'm sure you guys have seen this.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is the earliest reasonable. There's the most likely also. This for me causes a lot of problems because it's very deterministic, and people see this. And during Dorian, people from the Upper Keys started evacuating because they said, well, we've got until Sunday, sometime on Sunday, based on this. And this was the Friday 11 p.m. So people were starting to flee the Keys when they really didn't have to based on the forecast. But it was this graphic that kind of threw it a little bit. So let me show you this graphic is tied to something called it's the wind speed probabilities. So here is that graphic there. And so you can see that the real concern is up here where the probabilities exceed about 50%, which is South Florida North. These areas here, they're kind of fringe. And when it's approaching, obviously, these times are more significant. But these fringe times are kind of problematic because people see a time and they don't see the color as much. They don't realize that their chance is lower. So what we did to try to fix that was... Make sure I open the right graphic here.
So you must have put a threshold to that then.
Right. So I did this, which is, okay, you should see Hurricane Dorian, tropical force winds, most likely time of arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the red is the hurricane force winds, the tropical storm force winds are in the yellow here, and this is the threshold of the wind speed probabilities. And then I just used a model that was representative of the forecast and put some wind arrows there, because what we did end up saying was people in northern Broward, basically Fort Lauderdale North, if you feel like you want to shutter, we're not discouraging it, but mainly do the west and the north side of your house, because we were confident the storm would pass to the north. And so we knew that the strongest winds for any debris would be coming from the west, basically. So up here is the time, Sunday at 11 p.m. And then we'll go forward into time here. And so there's Monday at 4 a.m. And then there's Monday at 9 a.m. And now you can see that the arrival makes more sense, because the 50% chance there, which is considered the most likely time of arrival, is now just touching Miami-Dade and is into Broward and certainly into Palm Beach County.
This is really fascinating to me, because I have wondered about this for a couple of years. I haven't really bothered to try and put it in any kind of practice because we don't get a lot of hurricanes in Wichita Falls. But there's been a lot of complaining about the cone and the track, and do you turn the line on the cone, and so on and so forth. And I wondered, and maybe you've talked to the Hurricane Center people about this, but this is representative of what I wondered about that you're showing now is, doesn't it make more sense to pick specific times and go, here's the impact at this time, here's what it looks like, and here's the size, and then go 3 hours out or 6 hours out or whatever you decide, as opposed to this timeline? It sounds like you think that makes sense. That's what you're doing.
I think it's just intuitively obvious when you look at it here that
right.
As
long as you're really highlighting the time.
Right. And I've got the time really big there. And that's why I've got literally built into the graphic are pause points, and I will stop and explain at each point. Now, with the advance of graphics now, I don't think it's beyond the realm of the Hurricane Center to put a timeline graphic like this with a slider on it, so you can advance the timeline on your own and see where you are and see when your time of arrival is.
Yep.
And you can see
and doesn't that then eliminate the need for the line?
I think so, because I think the line is, and obviously each forecast cycle, this may change a bit, but I think the line is, it over alerts some people, and I don't know if it is representative for those who really need it.
And so have they considered that? Have they recognized it? Have you talked to them about that?
Well, I haven't had a chance to, because once we get into hurricane season, they're kind of locked down over there. So we're going to meet again.
Just try to get them to be on WeatherBrains. Good luck with that.
I'm meeting with them again, hopefully maybe in January or February after the season is far beyond us. But I'll let this spool out a little bit more. You can see how it goes through time. So there's the noon, there's the 3 p.m., there's the 6 p.m., there's the 9 p.m. And interestingly, So the tropical storm warning was basically Broward here, and then there was a hurricane warning up here, and the warnings matched perfectly with this graphic, which then I've dissolved into a graphic showing where the warnings were. And then
So this is sort of a 50% exceedance.
This is the 50% exceedance.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're going to have some people in West Palm that are mad at you because you said we were going to have hurricane force winds and we didn't get them. So you must have to explain that a good bit.
Right. And I basically, that's where you fall back on the, well, what did you prefer, that you got a hurricane or, that you didn't? You were on, on the flip of the coin.
I think this is really interesting. And because I remember when the ability came on the Hurricane Center website to turn the line on or off, which was like this huge thing. And some people don't get it. And then there was all this discussion about it. And it's like, well, okay, if that is causing problems, why don't we just kill that bird and move to something that's makes a little more sense?
So, and that came from Charlie, because that whole line turn on and off thing in 2004, because the line was going to the Tampa Bay area, but the cone still incorporated Fort Myers and Punta Gorda in Southwest Florida. And when the storm stayed in the cone but didn't follow the line, then people said, what happened? And the Hurricane Center said, well, it stayed within the cone. So then they wanted to take away the line, but there was such an outcry. They said, well, we don't want to lose the line. And so they gave us the option of having the line or not having the line. And I likened it to going to the Hurricane Center page. Now, when you look at their graphics, I liken it to going to Waffle House, and you can have the hash browns scattered covered, crispy with onions, chunked, diced, whatever. It's all these versions of the graphics, when I think they need to simplify and get away from the cone.
But there's always this, any kind of a change, there's always this huge hesitancy to kill off the legacy thing.
Oh, yeah.
I guess that'll never change.
I like the fact, Craig, that you're introducing your viewership here to probabilistic forecasting, whether they know it or not. That's what you're doing, and it's fantastic.
And on that same vein, and some of the great work by Jamie and the rest of the team over at the Hurricane Center with the storm surge forecasts, Craig, and they're generally a 10% exceedance, aren't they? How do you share that with your audience?
So and the thinking with that is that storm surge is so significant and so life-threatening. The number of deaths that occur attributable to hurricane force winds is very low relative to the number of deaths from rainfall, from freshwater flooding or storm surge flooding. So because of the amount of risk that you're exposed to in storm surge, I think the 10% is exactly right. Because if 9 times you don't get it, but that one time you do, the consequences are extreme, as opposed to the 50% chance of exceedance here. And we use the tropical storm force winds. Now, once the hurricane force winds come in, obviously, it raises the stakes quite a bit. But the tropical storm force winds, the boundary there, the outline is where most people won't shutter unless they need to. It's really down here in South Florida when you get on upper tropical storm and into hurricane force that most people put up their shutters.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty incredible stuff there. But you're not only a hurricane guy, Greg. You've done a lot of storm chasing in your career too. Talk about some of your more memorable storm chases.
So I chased. Let's see. Wow, I chased with Howie Bluestein when he was he's still at Oklahoma. Don Burgess. I don't know if you're familiar with Don. Don Burgess.
Haven't had Howie on, but we've had Don.
Yeah, he was getting his PhD when I was at Norman. So he was as great then as he is now, but just willing to help and share. I'm like, well, what is that? And he was like, because they were doing dual Doppler and doing this vector analysis back then at NSSL. And he said, well, we're looking high up now. And so that's divergence from the top of the cloud. And I was like, wow, that is fascinating. So I was just, at that point I was a sponge, everything I could learn. Mm-hmm. But I chased, I was in Colorado for a while, Colorado Springs. I used to chase Eastern Colorado, and got a great big tornado in Southwest Kansas. And I sold it to the Weather Channel with the caveat that every time they showed it, they had to say my name. And that basically got me out of the Colorado Springs market into Tampa, because I used it to kind of tag some publicity there.
So you sold them the whole tornado or just the rights to the video?
I sold them the rights to the video, and it happened to be, it was a Memorial Day weekend. And so it ran, and there was no other severe weather on that Monday that was photographed. And so all Memorial Day Monday, people watched it. and people were off of work and they saw it, and relatives and friends from all over the country. It's amazing how when something like that goes out. So I use that to kind of like to shoot a calling card up to try to get into a bigger market.
So talk about the complexities of forecasting Colorado versus what you deal with in Florida. What are some of the interesting differences?
So I loved Colorado. Colorado, you could have in Colorado Springs, my area went from 14,112 feet, which is the top of Pikes Peak, to whatever 4,500 feet in far southeast Colorado near Campo, and you would have a tornado watch in one part of your viewing area and a winter storm warning in another part of your viewing area. On many occasions, you still have that in Missouri and parts of the Midwest and stuff. Where
Iowa,
you have Iowa, but it wasn't that uncommon to have something like that. So I really learned to appreciate the just how important a factor the wind was and the orographic distribution of snowfall, and I think that helped me here in learning about sea breeze fronts and appreciating just a little bit of gradient from the east can make all the difference if you're going to hit storms, as opposed to, say, a 10,000 foot or 700 millibar wind from the west, which will bring Everglades storms your way.
Talk about the Denver convergence zone for a minute. I've always heard that. I've never really taken time to understand it. Did that affect you in Colorado Springs, or was that more up east of Denver?
So Colorado, is a kind of a rectangle, and there's this thing called the Palmer Divide or the Palmer Ridge that extends out from near Castle Rock eastward through Lyman, Colorado. And on a south or southeast wind, the wind would come up over that divide, that high ground, and kind of be buffeted by I don't have graphics for you guys, sorry on this, and be buffeted by the Front Range. And then they would kind of swirl into the Platte River Basin. And so you would have literally on the west side of Denver a north wind or a west wind, and then you'd have a southeast convergent wind. And this would provide this like background vorticity. And then you would just get land spouts galore on these really, really big days. In Colorado Springs, it wasn't as prevalent. You had the Raton, New Mexico. There was this divide that extended out from Trinidad and Raton eastward. You would have it sometimes in the river valley there near La Junta and places like that, but not. And so places like Eads in southeast Colorado, that's where I loved to chase. You could see forever, and you would see a storm and you'd say, well, I'll get there in a half hour. It was 100 miles away and you were driving like crazy. You didn't know.
And so where did they build Denver International Airport? Right there.
In the middle.
Right there. I can't tell you how many storm chases began at the airport.
Just fly in and pick up your rental car, huh, Dr. John?
Oh yeah, you just start there, and well, they've had more than one tornado hit the parking lot there at the airport.
Yeah, you don't even have to leave the parking lot.
You don't have to leave. No,
don't even rent the car. Just ride the rental bus. That'll work. So, any situation you ever put yourself in that you feared for your life, Craig?
There was a few. I think looking back, I didn't realize how dangerous flash flooding was, how insidious it was, and I chased a few storms in western Oklahoma at night, or at least ended the day chasing and still trying to play a few storms at night. And this was back, I'm almost embarrassed to say, this was back in the early 80s. No cell phone, no internet, none of that. You were literally playing a game of chess based on conceptual models and thinking there's frequent lightning over there, and maybe you got to stop at a truck stop and make a phone call, and somebody at the radar would say, yeah, it's just south of you. And you're like, oh boy, stuff like that. But I got into some flood situations where I think that knowing now I would have avoided that. I think was probably the most dangerous situation.
We've come a long way since the 1980s, that's for sure. So talk about the good and the bad of social media and in your market and your experience.
Well, we all deal with this, and I think that I think I learned this year that the people that come on to harass you, because I'm primarily big on Twitter, it seems to have a bigger outreach. The people that harass you, I just block them right away. You know what? If you're going to say I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm a hack, or I'm just trying to scare people, boom, you're done. Because I don't have time to debate or persuade or anything when your starting point is that I don't know what I'm talking about. I feel like a lot of people went to Google you. Some people have personal experience, which I consider more valuable than just an internet search. But I'm here to give the message to the people that want to hear it. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can change the channel or go someplace else.
Block first and ask questions later, right?
Bingo. Hey, Craig, what's your relationship with our friend Ken Graham in the National Hurricane Center?
Yeah, it's really good. Kim is such a affable guy. He just, you meet him and he's warm and very open. He's the kind of person that I like working with because you don't feel like he's keeping secrets from you. You run into some people in big situations, big hurricane situations where they're like, well, we're not too sure. They answer like that. And you always think, what are you keeping back? And so we do a lot of what are called pool hits, where the Hurricane Center is staffed with a camera crew during these big events, and we'll have windows. So we'll have a 5-minute window during this hour and a 5-minute window in that hour. And I think the best people, and Ken is one of them, Mike Brennan's a good one, Jamie Rome, of course, when he's on, he's hardly ever on anymore. Those people, I always try to ask them something that is not just in the advisory, like, hey, what are the hurricane hunters seeing now? And is this sudden drop in pressure, is that a concern to you? And just to kind of like draw out a little bit more, as opposed to, what's your latest forecast and things like that. But Ken's a great guy. Do you know Ken?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
Oh, we know him well.
He's a long-time friend. So do you, here in the tornado country, we are on National Weather Service chat with these various local offices. Do you have that ability with the Hurricane Center there?
We don't. They don't have a chat room. They don't do chat.
It would blow up the Weather Service servers.
Right. Probably. They relegate that responsibility, I think, to the WFOs. So we will chat with the local offices. And even my friends are good about being tight-lipped. And if I text them, you're going to extend to that watch south? Silence, crickets. So they're, and I respect that. They don't tip their hat. Although it's funny because, and I'm sure you guys feel in a similar way. I've done this long enough now where I feel like I know they're going to extend the watch, or I know this is going to happen just based on what the models are doing and things like that. So I never go on ahead of them, but I anticipate it and set up in a way that when they do say that, it's not a surpose.
How is the consistency in the market?
Or anything that you broadcast things like that on?
What was that, Bill?
You don't have an alternate Twitter account you broadcast anonymous things like that on?
No. And I get on the air literally and will say, when everybody's really anxious, like when Dorian was on Friday, Dorian was intensifying and still getting closer. I said, look, I am not telling you, to the viewers, anything I'm not telling my family, the people here at the station. It's one message, and I'm telling everybody, I am holding nothing back. This is what I know. This is what we should be doing. If that changes, I'll let you know, because I always want people to trust me. And if I say this was a surprise, I'll say this was a surprise. I didn't expect that. It was funny, in Irma, I got on the air in the height of Irma, which was Sunday afternoon. And Sunday morning, it really wasn't blowing that hard. And people were already asking, should we take our shutters down? I'm like, whoa, wait. You're about to realize why you have them up. And they did. And it blew and blew and blew. And about 3 o'clock, people were getting really, really stressed. 9 hours of strong tropical storm force winds. It was a long duration event. Power was off. Many people were listening on the radio. And I said, look, nobody's going to lose their roof in this, okay? If your house is shuttered, we're all going to be fine. And not more than 5 minutes later, we had a live shot of some little roof blowing off. Thankfully, it was a poorly constructed roof, but somehow it was coming loose and they shot it. And I thought, oh, well, but everybody else's roof was fine. And James, I'm sorry, you asked something in there?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have anybody rogue in that market that departs from the Hurricane Center, or do most Mets in the market kind of stick with the products coming from NHC?
So I think everybody sticks with the products coming from NHC. It's really risky to go out on your own against like a national coordinated message like that. When I feel like the Hurricane Center may be behind the curve, like say an intensification or something, I will say they're calling for tropical storm, but we won't be surprised if it's not much stronger. by the time we're to day 4 or day 5, stuff like that. Not to really go against them, but to say this is within our realm of expectations, things like that. The one thing that one of the stations does here is focuses on the cone a lot, and they've got this, we're zooming in on the cone, which just is kind of like, because you just saw from my presentation there, it's like fingers on the chalkboard when you're zooming into the cone.
When I was doing television, I'm sorry, James.
No, John, go ahead.
When I was doing television, Craig, I would really talk about the vortex message as quickly as that was available. And that was my way of updating whatever the latest advisory was from the Hurricane Center. A lot of people enjoyed that.
Yeah. And we'll now we've got the opportunity to plot the plane in real time over a radar or satellite, and then a vortex message will pop up, and it may, if the pressure drops quickly, we'll say, well, that's that's something we're going to be watching here for the wind to respond to that.
So let's talk about coverage for Irma and Dorian. How many hours wall to wall did you spend for each one of those storms?
So we started talking, and it's funny because, and I think you guys will appreciate this, the producers, and I have to say this, my news director is fantastic because she says, whatever you want to do, you do it. I will pave the way for you. And I've really never worked for somebody that trusted me so much. It's probably because we've worked together for 12 years now. And so I say, I think we need to do 3 minutes up weather starting tomorrow. And it's funny because they know how big the event is by how long the up weathers are. So I'll get into 5 or 6 minute up weather, and then we'll have some news stories, and then we'll have a 6 minute main weathercast, things like that, just to explain everything. And
I'm sorry, what's up weather?
The weather off the top. So
what James is always doing.
Yeah.
No, he's
every night.
He's the lead.
He's the lead, right?
Yeah, the lead.
Right, I'm the lead. So in Irma, we started Monday evening, which was Labor Day evening, with a 3 minute up weather, talking about what we should be doing because of what we were looking at. And I always try to do, and you guys talked about this a little bit earlier, what we should be doing now. Now we should be doing this. We even put up graphics that say, if it's still coming here, and it says tomorrow we're going to be doing this, checking our supplies, getting prescription drugs, getting some cash on hand, kind of all the things you find in your hurricane guide, except I try to put it on a timeline. And then if it's still coming this way, on Wednesday, we're going to check our boats. We're going to check this. We're going to check that. And on Thursday, here's what we're going to do until we finally get up to the point where we only go out about 3 days. We get down to tomorrow's our last day of preps, and the next day is the hunker down day. We're not going anywhere. We're staying in. So for me, I went home, I guess that Friday night, because the wind still wasn't that bad, came back Saturday morning and stayed through Monday morning. So it was pretty much wall to wall Saturday noon when I was on the air through Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And I said, guys, I've got to take a 2-hour nap. I've got to just do something. So I took a nap, and I'm sure you guys have gone through this. Then, because people are so attached to you, then the phones start ringing. Where's Craig? Where's Craig? Mm-hmm. And it was the first time in my life I was like, I wish they weren't wanting me right now because I was so tired. But the first hit when I got back on the air, it was like, okay, let's regroup here, because I was just coming out of being asleep. But you run on adrenaline most of it. I had gotten off of caffeine that week. It was kind of like that airplane movie. I picked the wrong week to give up caffeine. Picked the wrong week
to stop sniffing glue.
Sniffing glue, amphetamines, all of it. So the Irma was continuous coverage from Saturday morning. Well, we were on all night. I wasn't there that night. We started continuous coverage that Friday at 5 o'clock and stayed on. And then Sunday evening, we went off. Sunday, I guess at 8 o'clock, we went off.
So let's forget the hurricanes for a minute. Let's talk about the cool season. Do you miss the snow? I mean, what do you guys do in the market when it's quiet? I mean, what happens there in December?
I do miss the snow. It's funny because we're all hyped up about the potential cold front that's showing up on the European at 188 hours. And in fact, the executive producer's like, I think we should lead tonight. I'm like, it's 9 days away. We can't lead yet. So, but the big joke is that we're kind of wimps down here. We consider 50 degrees boots and sweater weather, and I think my biggest retweeted tweet, or maybe it was even on Facebook then when I was more active on Facebook, it got over 1 million views, and it was a February cold front in 40s in South Florida, and it went viral all the way up the Northeast coast because everybody up there is like, you guys are complaining about a major cold front and it's going to be in the 40s.
Do you guys John Morales was here a while back, and I was fascinated when he said in the summertime, they don't show the low temperatures.
We do, we don't. We do, and unfortunately, it's usually, unfortunately, the low is only 81 degrees again. We've had, kind of a bit of a concrete urban heat island effect around our Miami International Airport. And we've had an anomalous westerly wind this summer, which just crushes us because the heat over the Everglades comes over us. We get no sea breeze. And I think it's the highest number of 90 plus days we've had on record since the 1880s.
Wow.
Before we let you go, I have to ask this question, Craig. Where do you see this business in 10 years? What happens? Where are we going from here?
Well, I'll be retired, so so that's a little relief. I think that live weather coverage of events is still the only way that you can cover severe weather or hurricanes. I mean, they did a study. An advertising association did a study of Florida after Irma, and the numbers were phenomenal. That the average viewership was like 5 hours and 50 minutes, and it was 58% of the viewers turned into local television or something. They just were phenomenal. And so I think people still know that for live events, you can't get it on Twitter. You can't get it on any other social media. You literally have to watch somebody pointing to the radar or the satellite map or talking in real time what's going on. So as far as meteorologists are concerned, I feel like we've kind of got a niche in this that's going to keep us around for a while. The rest of the market, I feel like we're on the high part of the Titanic here too, right? Because it seems like it's going down, but we're still above water.
But is it still the Titanic? Because there's only X number of events like that per year, and that doesn't support the infrastructure and the business model.
Right. So I don't know. I mean,
well, you have to fix it, Craig. You fix the hurricane graphics.
Yeah, fix it, man. Yeah. So Craig, here's your chance to plug everything. Plug your social media accounts. Go. Plug away.
My social media account is Twitter. It's at Craig Setzer. Just as simple as that. I used to be on Facebook. I kind of didn't like the way that I felt like I was being, I don't know, maybe I wasn't being exploited, but I almost felt like every time there was a password breach or something like that, I felt like I should get $1 or something. That was my data that you're making money off of, and you exposed me. I felt like there should be some type of penalty. Obviously, that's me on a tangent here. It was funny because we used to do Facebook Lives, and in Irma, we were doing Facebook Lives, and somebody from our web department would come in and they would shoot it off an iPhone and go to our station page. And I only at the time on my personal page had about 1,000 friends. And by accident, one of the live weather hits, the web guy used my personal page, and literally I had 700 friend requests the next day because it had just gone out. And I was like, oh, I don't even know all these people, and look what you've done. But so I'm not active on Facebook as much. CBSMiami.com is our web page, but I try to be active, especially during hurricanes. Very, very active on Twitter.
Okay, he brings up a great question. I'm gonna do a survey of each of you. This is somebody has figured this out because he said he felt like something would happen and you felt like you were owed $1. Somebody has figured out what you are worth to Facebook. It's $1 figure. So we'll go down the line. Aubrey, what's the number? And I wish I could remember. It's a year or a month or whatever it is, but somebody has figured out per person. What do you think the number is? Yeah, your data is worth how many dollars to Facebook?
As in like Aubrey Banowit's personal data?
If they were going to send you a check, we're harvesting all this data from you, Here's your check that gets you payment.
I don't know, a couple $100,000.
What do you say, James?
1.2 million.
1.2 million. Bill?
$1,343.
John?
No, I dumped Facebook.
I know, but what's the number?
What's the number?
What do you think it's worth? If they're going to send you a check.
They can't afford me.
Okay. Troy?
That's a great answer, John. I really like that answer.
What's the number, Troy?
No idea. I don't know.
Craig, what do you say?
I'd say there's like a billion Facebook users, probably $5 a person.
Yeah, it's $26. Yep.
Great. Hey, Craig, do you have an 11 o'clock tonight, or are you still on duty?
I do, yes.
Oh man.
Okay, so you got to go. We're gonna cut you loose here. Thanks so much for being on the show. This was a great show. You got to come back. It was great having you, Craig. Great information, great graphics, great ideas. So thanks a lot, and hope you have a good show tonight.
Thanks, guys. It was an honor. Thanks a lot.
Great time.
Take care, Craig.
Okay, thanks a lot, Craig. All right, so let's see, Aubrey, you got a second to do email, maybe?
I do.
We actually do not have a Tony Rice. Tony apparently has lost his voice in Denver.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So if you
That's his heart in San Francisco.
If you're on Main Street in Denver, look around for Tony's voice.
Yeah, if you see his voice, please get it back to him. So,
and he has something important to talk about, because next Monday we have the transit of the sun by Mercury.
Right.
So if you have your eclipse glasses from a couple of years ago, the safe, versions, it's a chance to see that amazing occurrence happen. And Tony was bummed that he couldn't share that tonight.
Yeah, but follow him on Twitter, RTP Hokey, and you'll get all the information. But it's good stuff here. But let's do a quick dive into the email inbox, and just maybe there's something in there this week.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
I have one letter.
One.
A letter. And let me pull it up. So this is from Lance Blocker of the University of Georgia. I must say, I love listening to the show every week. Thanks for all you do. I interned with Megan and James at ABC 3340 this summer. Know both of them. Dedicated to increasing warning lead times for people living in manufactured mobile homes. It occurred to me during my satellite meteorology class last week with Dr. Shepard. Boy, Lance is just name dropping all over the place.
Yeah, he's kind of a big deal.
Very wise if he's learning from all these great people. So Dr. Shepard, that there may be a product in development which could help. Lance attached the link to the new experimental GOES model. However, this product may end up being more beneficial for highlighting small, more geographic areas where tornadic development is becoming kind of more and more likely. It's not is expected to happen, but more and more likely. So the product uses multiple channels of the GOES satellite data as inputs for an evolution of threat across a region. The threats are defined as 3 contour plots with the increasing probability of severe weather, 25, 50%, and 90% contour. So it sounds like that is falling kind of in line with the facets program that the SPC testbed has been using, with those increase in probabilities as a storm kind of evolves over time. So perhaps these threats may serve broadcast meteorologists as ongoing, kind of like an ongoing mesoscale discussion to alert people, especially in those mobile homes communities. The report demonstrated a lead time up to about 35 minutes.
I fear one thing, Aubrey.
Do what?
They might hypnotize us with them. They're very mesmerizing product he sent us. I really enjoyed watching it.
So that would be kind of cool. But yeah, it does definitely follow the facets program on that. So if you have an email you'd like to forward to us, maybe a cool link, guest suggestion, or just some fun information, go ahead and send it to email@weatherbrains.com. Email@weatherbrains.com. You can find us on the Twitter, and I think we're still on the Facebook, unless Kevin deleted it.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
All right, let's talk weather. We haven't done that yet. This is November 4th. And boy, let's start with our friends in the East. Dr. John, looks like you're going to turn cold next week, man. Goodness.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to see some snow, I think, in central PA. Where did that come from?
Wow.
Oh, was I already sharing it?
Wow, that was awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's go right to that, Aubrey.
No, I'll let you go ahead and finish, Dr. John. Talk about snow.
Oh, well, let's just look at the NAM here. This is valid. I'll share this with everybody. This is valid. It's 3Z on Friday. So we're going to get 2 cold fronts through here this week. The first one tomorrow, probably going to be dry. But the second one that comes in late Thursday, that's going to bring us down cold enough, I think, to see some snow in the higher elevations of Pennsylvania. Probably not where I live, but it's definitely going to be cooler as we head into the weekend. I think the other thing I want to note, stop the sharing here, is we were talking at length about the drought situation kind of creeping up into our area in the mid-Atlantic. Well, no worries there anymore, folks. I've measured 6.08 inches of rain in the last 15 days.
Wow.
And we've had 3 events of 1 inch or greater. So we had that anomalous setup with a trough over the Ohio Valley and anomalous ridge over Bermuda, and my goodness, the spigot just got turned on.
Wow. So how cold will we be there next week, John, after this thing early in the week? It looks pretty brisk.
Well, it was actually 28 here this morning. So our plants are done for. We've frozen them out.
Your growing season is over.
Oh, we're toast. Frozen toast.
Dr. John, I want to come up for a joint hair treatment now in the evening. So
okay, Bill.
Get ready to hoist one back.
There you go, man.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Lancaster. There you go.
So Aubrey had some wild weather within the past few days. Listen.
So this is from Thursday, and I didn't even hear about it until Sunday. Apparently, the homeowners here called. I did not get the message.
Describe what you're showing, by the way.
So this is a vehicle with a beam. That's bigger than a 2x4. That's like a 3x4, maybe, from the 1920s. The beam is from a barn built in the 1920s that is not only driven through a windshield, it is extremely driven through a windshield. And if you look on the driver's side, there's another beam.
Yeah, I see that.
Driven through. The hood is kind of curled up. So the National Weather Service is working on this to figure out if this is tornado damage, straight line wind damage. And I'll pull up another photo because there's a cornfield involved. And I know
Aubrey, along that line, I actually did a storm survey on Saturday. The Weather Service called me out to go down to, southern. Oh, baby, look at that.
Yeah. That's cool.
Wow.
So, and I kind of went out there because, I mean, they're 2 hours away. So I was in touch with them and called them. And, I actually found a friend who's a drone pilot who lives in this area. And I said, hey, what are you doing? He's like, I'm up on the mountain. And he said, I can be there in 25 minutes. I said, I'll meet you there. So we got the pictures and everything and sent it over to NWS. So they are still looking at this. But, looking at a lot of the damage, I mean, there's something there. And honestly, it kind of looks like a combination of maybe a microburst.
Yep, that's what I found.
And maybe a quick spin up. So that will be interesting. Hopefully we'll get more of an answer tomorrow.
Was there a warning for that storm?
There was not a warning for that storm. We did have 3 severe warnings on our West Virginia counties with a tornado possible. And we were getting the straight line winds that were coming down, and the winds were picking up. And the weather station at a little community airport, which is not far from where the damage actually stopped, recorded a 45-mile-an-hour wind gust about 5 minutes after this happened. Unfortunately, there's no other weather stations in the area, but this was one I was watching. And, when you kind of go back, we pulled up GR2 data, and rotational velocity was about 66, 67 knots on this when you go back to the GR3. So and we have not recorded a tornado, fun fact, since April 27th, 28th, 2011. That was our last tornado we recorded in my DMA.
No way.
Yep. We had 5 between midnight and 4 a.m.
Wow.
in the Shenandoah Valley. One traveled 33 miles.
Wow.
So in the overnight hours of that storm system. So that's our April 27, 28 story. And we'll see if with this one. But some of the damage was quite incredible. I wish the corn hadn't been taken down on the other side, because we might have been able to get a little bit more information. But I got a few more pictures today of some trees that are kind of laying kind of on top of each other. So
Awesome. All right. So let's go to Bill Murray in Birmingham, Alabama. Bill, you're got some cold air down here.
Yeah, we've had an amazing transformation west of I-65 in the rain department. You know, some places 8 to 12 inches of rain sort of erased the drought. West of I-65, we've gotten decent rain here, but parts of central Alabama still in severe drought. Parts of northeast Alabama too, but some parts of the state have gotten some relief. Yeah, it's been nice and chilly, even some frost the last couple of mornings. And
It looks good for the Alabama LSU game. Looks good for the Alabama LSU football game.
And I got something for you to do on Saturday, James. I think when you get up on the Jumbotron at Bryant-Denny Stadium and you do your weather forecast, you need to use a Sharpie, because the president is going to he's coming to the game, so it'll be perfect.
It'll be really perfect, and James will be honest for 20 years.
Yeah. I'm already toast with the feds anyway. I mean, that'll just do me in. Yeah. So let's go out west to Troy and Austin, Tejas. What's happening out there?
You know, last week it was interesting. We were out at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, and those weather records go back in the Air Force days, back to World War II, back in the early 40s. We were down to 25 the morning of the 1st of this month. That is the coldest it's ever been this early in the season, in a summer that just would never end. So we made the really big changes since then. We've had another cold front. We've got another one tomorrow, but it's weak. A stronger one on Thursday, maybe a quarter to half inch of rain with that. And then next Sunday and Monday, I think that for Kevin and myself over Texas and these areas, quite a cool down for the first part of next week.
Kev, what's happening in Wichita Falls?
Well, being a little north of Troy, we're a little bit more interested in this kind of spinning cutoff thing that's south of, I guess, Los Angeles right now. And it's going to sit there for a little while. And then Wednesday, maybe shoot a couple pieces of itself at us. But it was interesting to note, on the AFD today from Norman, they observed that, I guess must be late Wednesday, or it must be Thursday, that as this thing comes over, as they're talking about some heavy rain, but it has a precipitable water number of 1.5 or greater, which they observed was or would be a record high reading for the date, which I thought was kind of interesting. That's high, but I thought that just seemed kind of low to me for a record high. So we'll see if we're sloshing in it or not.
All right. So I'm going to have to go do the lead here.
You're the lead story.
I'm the lead.
Oh,
so,
before you
guys
go,
do picks of the week here.
You mentioned the Sharpie thing. You retweeted the president. Did you ever get any static from anybody because of that, or no, during that whole thing?
Oh yeah. Oh goodness.
No, I don't mean viewers, but I mean somebody official, like somebody from. Yeah.
He's being audited by the IRS, but nothing else.
IRS.
Yeah. I'm waiting on the audit letter to come in any day now.
Yeah, but nothing else.
No, okay. Nothing else.
So here's your chance to make up for Saturday.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. Somebody, y'all take it and run with it.
All right. Well, thank you, James. So yeah, fun show tonight.
James.
So picks of the week. Let's go around the room. Start out with Dr. John Scholar.
Oh baby, I got 2 for you. So the first one is my attempt to fight back against daylight saving time. Finally, we're back on standard time, which is where we should be. I hate this
permanent DST.
Permanent. No. The other way.
Late sunset.
Here we go.
Fight.
Okay.
Twitter
anyway,
fight.
That's one of my. Yeah, one of the links is a recounting of the DST debate, and you can take a look at that and make up your own mind. I know where mine is. And the second one is a link to a recent article in Geophysical Research Letters talking about an investigation into increased precipitation in the southeastern United States. And the interesting outcome of the article is it's not necessarily tropical cyclones. It is a consequence of frontal passages just generating more rain. And they talk about an anomalous high over the Atlantic. Bingo. That's what's happened to us in the last couple of weeks.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we've seen that persistently in the fall season.
Yeah, and that's what they talk about. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's been there probably for 15 years, so that's interesting. Well, thank you, Dr. I look forward to seeing you hopefully there in November when I get up your way in a couple of weeks. So.
All right.
So, Troy, what you got for us tonight?
Well, I've got a link that is still a little slow in getting there, but Ken out in the Western Region headquarters and involved a lot with the aviation folks out there started to redo that national observation page that I think I showed you earlier in the year. And it's a little clunky right now. He admits it, but I've given you the cut of Texas over Texas. You can go up there and change the area in the upper left-hand side of the screen. You can look at a bunch of stuff on the upper right-hand side, but it's getting there. I think they've kind of wanted to get away from the static image, which is what they had with this site at one point. But again, it's nice to get hover over. Thank you, Dr. John. And it gives you a nice view. And again, you can go to different parts of the country, but this is a redo of Ken's site that he had. It was a static site that we had out of Western Region headquarters. Also tonight, he may be fixing to pop on the air here in just a couple of minutes, but last week we spent time talking about Olga and the effect through Tennessee and Mississippi. I want to say hello to Tom up at WBBJ TV up in Jackson, Tennessee. He watches us, views us online live, and just wanted to say he reached out to me last week, and I appreciated that.
I was amazed passing through Western Tennessee, northeastern Mississippi at the number of trees that were down last Monday night.
Yeah, it's they're saying it's worse than the ice storm they saw in the 90s up there. And I'd really want to see some students do some work, some good research work on that, because this thing is a pretty wide path and it is an interesting event to look at.
Yeah, I experienced it. There were huge trees that obviously had fallen across the highways up there near Savannah, Tennessee, and on up to east of Jackson, Dresden, I think, Tennessee, that area. It got a little better, but south of there, it was a mess. So, yeah I can attest to that. So, Kevin Selly, pick of the week for us.
I don't have one, but I will mention briefly that, and thanks to the people who invited me, remember last year, Aubrey went to Norman to do the hazardous weather test bed, and they're doing those tests again where they bring broadcasters in, and they invited me, this Kim's group, invited me to come on Wednesday morning and just watch what was going on. Fascinating stuff. They're using facets, and they're starting to see what broadcasters will do with that and see what emergency managers will do with that. And I got to kind of sit in the corner and look how the forecasters and the modelers are working with this. And I'm telling you, man, it is big stuff. And I'm really genuinely 50% thrilled and 50% terrified because it's a lot of information, and I'm really interested to see how this is going to get out and be used in a more public way. And I know they're aware of that. Patrick Marsh addressed that, who's going to get to see this stuff. But you look far enough down the road, and people like AccuWeather and others will figure these things out as well. And it will become a certain level of chaos. And so I guess it's not a pick of the week yet, but it's a plug. Something I kind of teased a while back is it's going to be called Weather Insights. And it's something that Kim is allowing me to work on with them. And it's going to be a way to share this type of information, hopefully in small, manageable pieces, a little bit at a time, with weather communicators. And we're getting close to hopefully launching that soon. So I appreciate the opportunity to plug that. And whenever there's a website to go to, I'll let you know. And I guess I'm not the lead, but I got to go anyway. So thanks, you guys. See you.
Bye, Kev.
All right, see you, Kevin.
See you later. So, well, that's picks of the week. My pick of the week was some guy in Alberta, a TV meteorologist, running around dressed up like a unicorn. I thought James should do that. But that pick is probably not appropriate for the show. So we'll skip that pick. And has anybody seen the new ACES site? The Weather Service has done a fantastic job with some new graphical data on that. So got a few twists and turns you have to manage. But as soon as you master them, I tell you what, it really is cool. So go over and check out the ACES climate website.
Well, it looks like we've got access to now data again. For a long time, that was
Do you know, Dr. John, what that was all about? My understanding,
No.
it was a government funding deal because it hit around October 1. So that makes sense. But I heard there another contract that failed to get signed or something like that.
Well, those of us that rely on that data were sweating, man.
Yep,
That's
you're right.
not good.
Yep.
Well, thank goodness it's back. So anything else to bring before the group here, gentlemen? Nope. And hearing nothing from the cheap seats, I'll go ahead and get ready to wrap. Next week, we're going to talk to Nicola Twilley from Vanity Fair and Jeff Brown, who's a forester in California, who has got some tremendous insight on their fire problem and our fire problem. And he has some amazing information to share with us. And it's a show that I had to postpone until after football season because I had to be a part of that. So I'm looking forward to that. Mike Linden with My Radar join us with Brian Newdorf, who's made the switch from the private side to the Weather Service side. So good friend of the show, Brian Newdorf. We'll be excited about him. We're excited about Reed Timmer right before Thanksgiving on the 25th. And then we got a couple of openings in early December. Dr. John, you need to get on filling those openings for me.
Yes, sir.
All right. You work on that. We'll have some beer or something.
Or
chocolate
something.
milk, I guess. We'll have
That
chocolate.
would be best. Yes.
We'll have chocolate milk up there in a couple of weeks. But unless there's anything else to add, I'll go ahead and put a wrap on this WeatherBrain. WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast all about weather. We do it on Monday nights generally, and we can you can hear the show anywhere that you generally consume your podcast. Please tell your friends. Bring them on. We've been doing it for so long. I can't believe anybody else would want to join us, but we'd love to have a few new listeners here and there. But until next Monday night, when we do this show again, as I always tell you, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night. Take care.
You too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for watching and listening. Great to have Craig on the show this week, and I got to wrap it up because we got business next door. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next Monday night for Weather Brains. Thanks for watching. Have a great week, and God bless.